Alright, what's up YouTube? We have another coronavirus update. I'm going to start off with the statistics and then I'll go into more detail about what's coming out from the CDC, that sort of thing. So there's plenty of bad news. I'll start off with the good news. So according to the CDC, only about 3% of confirmed cases are children. So in terms of children getting sick, with most of these diseases, viruses, flu, it hits children and the elderly the worst. But in terms of the coronavirus, only about 3% of confirmed cases happen with children, so that's really good news. I have one on the way and 2 little boys, so that's very good news for me specifically. So we'll go through some of the local. I'm in the U.S., so we'll go through some of the local, epidemics or what could be forming into an epidemic. We have 11 cases in Santa Clara, California. So that's starting to get a little bit emboldened. We now have 27 cases around Seattle, we just had our first case there a few days ago. Now it's at 27. And like I said in another video, I think it was 2 days ago, there's reason to believe that it's been there for a few weeks because there's certain insignificant changes that we can see, like variations that we can see as the virus has evolved in a very insignificant way, but it brings us to reason. It kind of gives us a time frame of how long it's been there, how long it's been evolving there, even though these changes aren't really like significant mutations, for instance. So that's something to think about. But we know that it may have been there for up to 6 weeks. As I said, I believe yesterday or the day before, 19 cases in Toronto, which that's starting to get a little serious, and 12 cases in Vancouver, which is, I think it's so you have Seattle, SeaTac, and then right there, a few minutes north of Seattle, then Everett, Washington, and then right on the border is Vancouver, so maybe an hour and a half drive between Seattle and Vancouver. You have Vancouver and Everett right there next to each other. So we're seeing kind of like a epidemic, almost like which we're seeing could be an epidemic in that area right by the border of the U.S. and Canada, on the the northwest of the U.S. And as I said recently, right now Washington can only test up to 100 people per day, and they have to test them twice, and then it takes about 24 hours for these tests to come back, showcasing if the person has the virus or not. So that's something to think about. But on that note, I'll go back to this in a sec with the testing kits and whatnot, because there's more information, some recent information coming from the CDC in terms of testing. So let's go through the stats. And globally, we're looking at 3.41% for the mortality rate right now. Outside of China, we're looking at 1.67% for the mortality rate. So right now, outside of China, these following numbers are going to be specifically outside of China, and relative to the percentages of increase will be relative to the last 24 hours. So right now there's 13,938 cases outside of China, confirmed cases, 233 tests, and there's specifically 127 cases in the U.S. 127 today, 105 yesterday. It's a 22 case increase that we know about. So there could be plenty more that we don't know about. The testing is very slow. The testing is not always accurate. As we know, people have been tested in the U.S. And they've been released, and then it later found out that they did have it. That happened in California a week or so ago, and it's an increase in the last 24 hours of 20.95%. That's about yesterday we had, I think, just over 22%. At that rate, we're looking at well over 500,000 people in mid to early April in the U.S. alone of confirmed cases. obviously there's 3 more deaths, all within that Seattle area in King County. We're mostly dealing with elderly, so that's something to keep in mind. It's increased by 50%, but I don't like to use these smaller numbers as much. But there could be plenty more cases that we don't know about. Now I'm looking more outside of China because I wouldn't trust their numbers, because they keep changing the definition of what a confirmed case is. I don't trust China's numbers. So like I said, 13,938 cases outside of China, confirmed cases, as compared to 11,169 cases yesterday, 24 hours ago. So that's an increase of 2,769 cases outside of China, confirmed cases. So that's an increase of 24.79% in 24 hours. That's very consistent. We've been seeing about 24 to 28% increase in confirmed cases. So that we're looking at about 14,000 cases. So we're gonna hit over 100,000 confirmed cases globally sometime either tomorrow night or sometime on Friday. But it's likely way more than that, given China's numbers. They keep changing the definition, so I would assume it's way more than that. Iran, the cases are jumping up like crazy. Iran, it's jumped up over 50% in 24 hours in terms of confirmed cases. The deaths in Italy have jumped up over 50% in 24 hours. And they've had several dozens of deaths. So it's a huge dramatic increase. I mean, it's been jumping up pretty steadily in Italy, and it's very, very dramatic. So deaths outside of China, 233 right now this morning, as compared to 173 yesterday, 24 hours ago. That's an increase of 60 or 34.66%. Now the death toll from the coronavirus has been kind of, swaying quite a bit, but we're looking at about that 22 to 28% range increase every 24 hours as we're seeing with the confirmed cases. But it's going to take a while for the death toll to catch up with the confirmed cases, because as I showed in the video before, Italy might have, one, or I think Italy had at the time, it's much higher now, they had just over 2% for the mortality rate. But you're talking about 95% of people that haven't recovered of those confirmed cases in Italy specifically. So, many of those people are going to recover, but some of them are going to die. As we're seeing now, the mortality rate is way higher now. So these are, those are a lot of the numbers. There's at least 100 cases, and which some of these countries have over 1,000, what China, tens of thousands. So there's at least 100 cases in China, South Korea, Italy, Iran, Japan, France, Germany, Spain, the US, Singapore, and Hong Kong. So Spain is a huge one. So we see we have France, France, Germany, Spain. So we see this really increasing in Western Europe, in that area with France, Spain, Germany. So that's really bad news. For some reason, the popular French museum opened back up. I don't know why, but it closed for a little while, and now it's open back up for some reason. For instance, the CDC says that we should avoid or limit social gatherings, especially with large people. Stop shaking hands, especially in public, outside of your household, that sort of thing. So we see these cases skyrocket in Western Europe, which is really bad, because that's we're talking about some of the best healthcare in the world. If it's increasing there, we see our first death in Iraq, for instance. It's only going to get worse. What should we see in Iran? So it's just something to think about. So going into more detail of what's coming out from the CDC says communities need to think about ways to stop the spread of disease by limiting social events and creating social distancing. So they've been kind of stepping towards this direction for a while. And now they're outright saying it, that we needed to start avoiding like concerts. We just had Super Tuesday yesterday, and that was yesterday morning from last night, and between that time frame, and that's California was one of the states. I'm trying to think, was it Oregon? I don't think Oregon was. I think Georgia wasn't. I'm trying to think somewhere else that might have a few cases, but yeah, California definitely has quite a few cases right now, which we're seeing what can be an epidemic in Santa Clara, around San Francisco, San Jose, that area, Sacramento, and we just had Super Tuesday. That's an easy way for asymptomatic people. It has a large incubation period without symptoms for it to easily spread. And we have the Olympics that's probably going to be delayed. And that's the Olympics this year is going to be in Japan. And they just moved the marathon within the last few weeks, maybe a few days, I don't remember, where they're going to have the marathon. I think it moved about 2 hours north of where it's supposed to be. But so that happens in July and August. It's several weeks. So that might be delayed. Maybe elections might be delayed, for instance, in the U.S. specifically. We'll see how that goes. The CDC is suggesting that they think this is going to be a yearly thing, kind of like the flu. Keep that in mind. So let's talk about test kits. So more CDC test kits are going to be given with up to 75,000 more people expected to be tested by public by public labs, and then 1 million by this weekend to be tested by commercial labs. So we had this issue in Washington where they can only test up to 100 people per day, and then they'll have to look at the test 24 hours later to see if the person has it or not. These tests aren't all that accurate. Hopefully we're expanding and kind of evaluating what's wrong with these tests in terms of finding out if someone has the coronavirus or not, COVID-19. But I'm hopeful we're getting better at this. But we're so from Washington, and I imagine that this will be broadened out outside of Washington. 2 tests per person in this 24-hour period. Might be 2 different tests. I'm not sure, but I think it was 2 different labs might check it. I think that's what the governor of Washington said. But it looks like we're expanding how many tests we can do, because there could be plenty of more cases in the U.S. And World Health, I already said this, World Health officials say that the Summer Olympics may be delayed. All right, so that's basically the updates. So cases have increased outside of China. Confirmed cases, 24.79%. Death toll outside of China from the coronavirus, this in the last 24 hours has increased 34.68%. And then U.S. confirmed cases has increased 20.95%. So for all this people that still think, that want to trivialize this virus, hey, it's not as bad as the flu, this is increasing dramatically, and with a high death toll, 3.41% globally for the mortality rate, and right now 1.67% outside of China. But as I said before, we have many of these countries with over 90% of people yet to recover that aren't dead. So we are to assume that some of those people are going to die without recovering. So it'll take a while for that death toll outside of China to catch up. But I don't really care for those Chinese numbers anyways, because I don't really trust the numbers that they're putting out. So that's kind of the broad facts and broad update of what's happened in the last 24 hours with the coronavirus. So we'll keep an eye on this, see what happens tomorrow.